Today's geometry question is from paper 2 of the November 2023 exams. I'm a qualified maths teacher and GCSE examiner, and in this video I'll show you how to get full marks in this type of question. In this video I'll be showing you how to answer question 28. You can pause the video now if you'd like to try it first. So question 28. The diagram shows an empty tank in the shape of a cylinder. The cylinder has a radius of 15 centimeters and height of 43 centimeters. Water flows into the tank at a rate of 0.47 liters per minute. Calculate the number of minutes it takes to completely fill the tank. Give your answer correct to the nearest minute. Right, even though they haven't mentioned the word volume in this question, this is a volume question. It's a question about how much space there is in a container. Right, so the first thing we need to do with this question is find the volume of the cylinder. To calculate the volume of a cylinder, we need to multiply the area of the cross-section by the height of the cylinder. The cross-section is basically the 2D shape you see when you slice through a 3D shape. So in this case, the cross-section of a cylinder is a circle, and the cross-section will be the same at both ends of your 3D shape. So this circle at the top is the same size as this circle at the bottom here. Right, so coming back to this formula, the formula for volume is the area of the cross-section. So I am going to change that to area of a circle in this case. So shall we put area of circle, because our cross-section is a circle, times the height of the cylinder. So the formula for area of a circle is pi r squared. Yeah, and we need to multiply that by the height. Right, r in this formula is radius. So radius is the distance from the center of a circle to the circumference. So the radius of this circle is 15 centimeters. So if we come back to this formula here, so we want to rewrite this as pi times 15 squared. So when anything's written together like this in algebra, it means that you're multiplying them. Right, so we've got pi r squared times the height of the cylinder, which is 43 centimeters. Right, so we've got 43 centimeters here. Now, if we put all this into our calculator, for today's question, I'm using the Casio 991CW. So I'm going to go to home, and this is just a calculation. So I'm on calculate, I'm going to select OK, and then I'm going to type in shift pi, so shift then 7 to bring up pi, times 15, and then this button here to square it, and then times 43, and then execute. This gives me 9675 pi. Now the unit is going to be centimeter cubed, because at this point here where we're multiplying, that's an area, so the unit will be centimeters squared. Now if you multiply a centimeter squared by then we get a centimeter cubed. If you've got to this point, this will be your first mark in an exam. So the first mark is just from finding the volume of the cylinder. Now going back to our question in the second line, it tells us that water flows into the tank at a rate of 0.47 liters per minute. Now the most important word in this sentence is liters. What you'll notice that it's a different unit from what we're working on at the moment. So currently we're working at centimeter cubed, and they're talking about liters. Liters and centimeter cubed are both units of volume. Right, so when you're talking about volume, you can measure it in centimeter cubed or you can measure it in liters. But for the purpose of this question, and when you're solving any question like this, you need to make sure that the units are the same. So if we're going to work in liters, you need to make sure all the units in the question are in liters. And if you're going to work in centimeter cubed, you need to make sure that all the units are in centimeter cubed. So the next thing we need to do now is we need to convert centimeter cubed to liters. Now, 1 centimeter cubed is the same as 1 milliliter. So the reason we have two different units for volume is because volume can be solids or liquids. When we're talking about the volume of a solid object, we tend to use centimeter cubed. And when we're talking about the volume of liquid, we tend to use milliliters or liters. So 1 centimeter cubed is equal to 1 milliliter. And 1,000 milliliters is equal to 1 liter. So that means that 1,000 centimeter cubed would also be equal to 1 liter. Okay, so this is important conversion to know. Right, and we're going to use this now. So if we have liters at the top here, liters, and we have centimeter cubed, so we're going to do a conversion. So if we do this, I like tables, so I'm going to use a table for this section here. So I'm going to put what we know. So I'm going to put 1 liter. This is what we know already. We know 1 liter is 1,000 centimeter cubed. And we also know the volume of our cylinder, which is 9675 pi centimeter cubed. So I'm going to put that on my table here. So 9675 pi. So 9675 pi. Right. When you're in the middle of a calculation, you don't need to, so we don't need to convert this to decimal yet. Right, so that's why I've kept it in terms of pi. This is what, if you just leave the pi on, you call that leaving your answer in terms of pi. So I've just left it here. At the end of my calculation, if necessary, I can convert it to decimal. But in the middle of a calculation, the most accurate answer will be you just leaving the pi on as it is. Right? So we know that the volume that we have at the moment is 9,675 pi. And now we need to convert that to liters. In order to do that, we need to see what our multiplier is. What do we multiply liters by to get to centimeter cubed? So just looking at this table here, so what would I multiply 1 by to get to 1,000? So that's 1 times 1,000 is 1,000. So the multiplier here is liters to centimeter cubed is going to be times 1,000. Which means if I'm going in the opposite direction, so if I'm going from centimeter cubed to liters, that means I need to divide by 1,000. Right, so I'm going to go back to my calculator now. I already have the figures 9675 pi from my previous calculation. I already have that on my screen. So all I need to do at this point is go to divide and then 1,000. Right, and then execute. And that would give me 387 over 40 pi. Again, because we're in the middle of a calculation, I don't need to convert it to decimals. But if you really wanted to, all you need to do is go to Format and go down and then decimal. And then that will tell you that the answer is 30.39490,892. So let's just make a note of that. Though I am going to keep working in terms of pi because I'm in the middle of a calculation. So we've got this. So 387 over 40 pi is the same as 30.39490,892. Right? So you can choose to work with the decimal value or you can choose to work in terms of pi. So don't forget that we need to remember to put our unit on. So this is liters at the moment. Right, so the first thing we did was find the volume of our cylinder here. And that gave us our first mark. So at this point, if you've just stopped here, you would get 1 mark on this question. Now we converted the volume we got here, and we've converted that to liters. Now this gets you your 2nd mark. So from conversion to liters, so 2 marks. So we had 1 mark here. Now this is another mark, right? So if you stopped at this point, 1 mark. So if you stopped at this point, you will get another mark here for the conversion to liters. So I'm going back to the 2nd line again. The water flows into the tank at a rate of 0.47 liters per minute. And we're trying to fill a space that's 30.3949092 liters, right? So in order to fill our tank, we need 30 and a bit liters. And we know that in 1 minute, we can only fill in 0.47 liters. So how long would it take to fill in the tank? So I'm going to use another table to figure that out. This time on my table, I'm going to have time, and then I'm going to have volume. So on this table, I'm going to have time, and I'm going to have volume. Right, and then I'm going to put in the information we have already. So just put in some columns and 2 rows. Right, so what we know so far is that the water flows at a rate of 0.47 liters per minute. So in 1 minute, so if we go here, 1 minute. So in 1 minute, we would get 0.47 liters. 0.47 liters. Right? We are trying to fill in a cylinder that has 387 over 40 pi. So 387 pi over 40. That's the same thing as this, right? So like we did in this previous table over here, we need to find out what the multiplier is. So what would I multiply 1 by to get 0.47? And whenever you're multiplying 1 by something and you're getting another answer, the multiplying is that other answer. So that means we're multiplying by 0.47, which means if we're going in the opposite direction, we are going to be doing the inverse operation. So inverse is just fancy word for opposite. So we're going to be dividing by 0.47. So what I mean is that we're going to be dividing this number here, 387 pi over 40, by 0.47, right? I already have the decimal value on my calculator, which was 30.394908892. So I'm just going to carry on from there and go straight and do a divide by 0.47 and then execute. And that's giving an answer of 64.6700 and so on. So these 3 dots means that, yes, I know that there are more digits, but I've decided to stop here. Now, if you got to this section here, you've just got yourself another mark. So this is another mark for working out the time it will take to fill in our cylinder with water. Right, so let's go back to our question and see what else we need to deal with. So we've worked out the volume from this section here. We've converted from centimeter cube to liters, and we've found out how long it will take to fill in our cylinder. Now, it says calculate the number of minutes. That's what we've just done. It takes to completely fill the tank. Give your answer correct to the nearest minutes. So if you're giving your answer correct to the nearest minute, means that we're counting up in ones. So at the moment, we've got an answer of 64.6700 minutes. Right, if we want to round out to the nearest minute, because this number here, right, so going back to this number, we've got, this is our ones, and this is the tens. Right, the question wants us to stop here because it says to the nearest minute. Now, if we're doing that, we need to look at the next digit along, which is your decider. And if that digit is 5 or more, we add 1 to this last digit here. So this to the nearest minute, 64.67 to the nearest minute is going to be, that's going to be 65 minutes if we round it to the nearest minute. Now, if you're not confident with rounding, what I would suggest is make sure you write all the digits on the calculator first, or at least 4 digits the way I've done it here. So to 4 decimal places. So I've got 64.6700. And remember to put the 3 dots if you're not confident. But then you still need to attempt the rounding. Right? So just do it this way. In an exam, if you've done this bit wrong, say you've rounded it to 64, you will still get you will still get full marks because you've provided an answer that's more accurate than the required answer. So for this question here, if I'd put 64.6700, I would get full marks, right? Or if I'd rounded it wrongly and put 64, I would still get full marks because I'm showing this bit. So that's something to note. Now, if we got to this stage, this will give you the final mark, which makes the total mark for this question 4 marks. Right, so what we've done is we've worked the volume, we converted to liters, we found how long it will take to fill in the cylinder, and then we rounded that to the nearest minute. If you found this video useful, then you should watch this one next. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share.